Continuing with Book 3, Chapter 35, Verse 20. The war was like the last doom of death, ready to devour the world, destroying flags, banners, umbrellas, and chariots in a confused chaos. Shining weapons fell like fragments of the bright sun, burning all things like a burning pain inflames the soul and mind. The stretched bows were like rainbows and falling arrows like showers of rain. Flying sabers resembled forked lightning, and their falling fragments like sparkling hailstones. The dire massacre made a sea of blood with hurling stones as its shoals and rocks. Flying arms resembled stars falling from heaven. The sky was like a sea full of whirlpools of discs hurled through the air. There were burning fires performing funerals of the slain. Missiles were like bolts of thunder that struck rock-like elephants dead in the field to block the passage of men. Earth and sky were hidden by a thick cloud of showering arrows, and the army below was a sea of tempestuous warfare and bloodshed. Destructive weapons were flying on all sides, like huge dragons of the sea, carried aloft by gusts of wind from the stormy main. The flying arms of bolts, swords, discs, pikes, and lances were blazing and breaking one another in the air with such hideous noise that it seemed to be a second deluge. When the last tornado blew up everything on high, scattering them all in all directions, crushing and smashing them with a tremendous peal. Chapter 36, The Battle, Duels Between Equals, Catalogue of Forces. Vashishta speaking. Heaps of arrows rising in spires above the ground drove the cowards and the wounded far away from the battlefield. Hills of dead bodies of men, horses, and elephants, heaving in promiscuous heaps and appearing like clouds fallen upon earth, invited the demon yakshas, rakshasas, and carnivorous pikashas to come and play in the wide ocean of blood. Now there commenced a contest between men of equal rank and virtue, among those of good character, valor, and strength on both sides. All took part in the combat, even holy householders. They fought duels like one cloud clashing with another, and like the confluence of two streams, discharging their fury against each other. As a rib is joined to another and one side with the other, so met horse against horse and elephant against elephant in mutual conflict. As one forest clasps and clings to another, and as one hill is linked with another in a range, so the duelists struggled with each other like one wave dashing against the other. Footmen fought with footmen, like reeds crush reeds and bamboo strikes each other in swirling winds. Chariots fell upon chariots and broke each other to pieces. Citizens beat rustics like the gods smote the demons of old. The sky, which had been clouded by flights of arrows, was now emblazoned by the archer's banner, resembling a rainbow of various colors. At last the warriors, who were overpowered in their conflict, fled from the field as people do from a fire. Now armor-bearers with discuses met in contest with those who shielded against discs. Archers opposed archers, and swordsmen challenged the other side's sword fighters. So hookers and crookers challenged their co-rivals with crossbows in hand. Maces were opposed to maces, and lancers were set against the lance bearers in fight. Spearmen braved spearmen, and the throwers of missiles were crossed with missiles in hand. Mallets fought against mallets, and clubs were opposed by clubmen in the conflict. Combatants with pikes encountered pikemen face to face, and iron rods were crossed in strife against pointed tridents. Fighters with missile weapons counteracted the missiles of their enemies, and those fighting with battle axes resisted the pole axes and pickaxes of their foes. Trappers, with their traps and snares, attacked the darters of nooses and lassos. Those who threw javelins withstood the javelins of the throwers on the other side. Daggers opposed daggers, and cudgels fought cudgels. Combatants with iron gloves opposed boxers with iron fisticuffs, and those with iron cranes in hand pursued fighters with crooked goads. Warriors with plowshares attacked plowmen, and those with tridents fell upon the opposing trident holders. Champions with chained armor set upon soldiers attired in mail. They poured on the field like flights of locusts, or like the waves in the troubled sea. The air also appeared like a sea, with flying discs whirling like whirlpool, and the flight of reeds whistling like gusts of wind. Various flying weapons seemed like sharks and dolphins moving about it. The sky of the heavens became the great deep of the sea, impassable by celestial, owing to the waves of weapons moving like sea monsters in the air. Thus, the armies of the two belligerent rulers, each composed of 8 divisions, as described below, furiously engaged one another. Now, hear me relate to you the forces on the side of Padma, now named King Vidarata, and the allied powers that came to his side from the central and eastern districts. There came the hardy warriors of Kosala and Benares, those of Magadha and Utkala, situated in the east, and the Mekalas of the Vindhya range, and the Karkas of Karnataka, and the Madras in the south. The chiefs of Hima and Rudras, and the Tamils from the south. The Pragjotishas, and the horse-faced Asmukas, and Ambashta cannibals. Then there were joined the Varna Koshtas, and the Vishwotras, and the eaters of raw food and flesh, and the fish eaters, and those with faces like tigers, the Kiratas, with the Saviras, and one-legged people. Next came the mountaineers of Malyavana, Sibira, and Anjanagiri, and others, having the ensigns of bulls and lotuses, and the people of the sun rising mountain in the east. Those that joined from the southeast are the following, namely the Vidyaras, the Chetis, the Vatsas, the Darsaranas, near the confluence of the 10 streams, and the Angas, Bangas, and Upabangas of Upper and Lower Bengal. They that met from the south were Kalingas and Pudras, and the Jataras, and Vidarbhas, and the hill people, the Sarbasas, the outcast tribals, the Karnas, and the Tripura people. Those named Kantakas from their thorny district, the unenlightened Komalas, the Kanaris, the Andhras, the Cholas, and the people on the borders of the Charmanvati River. The Kakos are bald-headed and bearded people, and those of the Himakunta hill. The frizzled and long-necked people, and the inhabitants of Kishkinda and Kopapur. The princes that joined with Leela's husband from the south were as follows. Vindhyas, the Kusumiyas of Patna, the Mahendras, and the Darduras, the Malays and the solar race, and the prince of the 33 United States, and the rich and united cities of Avati and Sambhavati. And those of Dasapura of Kata, Chakra, Rishika, Kuch, and others, and the foresters of Upagiri on Bhadragiri hills, the prince of Nagori and the chiefs of Dandaka forest, and the joint states of the people, the Sahas, the Saivas, and the hill people of the Rishyamukha and Karkota and Vimbila foresters. Then came the inhabitants from the banks of the Pampa, the Kirakas, and Karkaviras, along with the Kirikas, Asikas, and people of Drumapatana. Next came the Kasikas and Kalukas, the Yadus, and Tamraparnikas, the Gonardas, the Kanakas, and the people of Dinapatan, the Tamils, Kadambars, Sahakaras, and deer hunters, the Vaitundas, Tumbavanalas, and those attired in deer and elephant skins. Then came the lotus-like Sivis and Konkas and inhabitants of the Chitrakuta mountains, with the people of Karnata, the Mantas, Batakas, and those of Katak. The Andhras and Kohilapil people, the Avatis and Chedis, with the Chandas and Devanakas and Karuncha Vahas. At last came the people from the 3 peaks of Chitrakuta mountains, called Silakara, Nanda, Mardana, and Malaya, which were the seats of the guardian Vakashas of Lanka. Then those of the southeast were there in the great realm of Surat, with the kingdoms of Sindh, Saurvira, Abhira, and Dravidas in Deccan. Also those of the districts of Kikata, Siddhakanda, and Kaliruha, and Mount Himagiri or Golden Hills, and the Raivataka range. Then the warriors of Jaya, Kachka, and Mewar, as also the Yavanas and Balikas and Marganas, the nomads, and the gray-colored Tumbas on the north. Then came the Lhasa races and many hill peoples, inhabiting the borders of the sea, forming the limit of the dominion of Leela's husband on the north. Now know the names of the countries belonging to the enemy in the west, and those composed of the following mountain ranges: namely Mount Maniman and the Kurapana Hill, with the hillocks of Anorka, Meghababa, and Chakravana Mountain. There is the country of the 5 peoples, limiting the territory of the Kasa Brahmins, and after that the Paraksha, the Paraka, and Santika countries. Thence stretch the countries of the Saivyas, Amarakas, the Pastakyas, and the Gahutwas, and then the Highila country, and those of the Suyas, Gayas, and Tajikas, and Hunners. Then along the side of some other countries, there is a range of Karka hills, inhabited by barbarous people, devoid of caste custom and limits of moral duties. Thence stretches a country hundreds of leagues in length to the boundary mountain of Mahendra, abounding in rich stones and gems. After that stands the Ashwa range with hundreds of hills behind it, and extending to the dead ocean on the north of the Pariyatra range. On the northwestern side, there are countries beyond the boundary mountains of Asia, where Vinupati was the king of the land. Then there are the countries of the Palgunakas and Mandavayas, and many other people, and those of Purukundas and Paras, as bright as the orb of the sun. Then the races of Vanmilas and Nalinas and Durgas, who were so called from their tall stature and long arms and hairs. Then there were the Rangas, Stanikas with protuberant breasts, and the Guruhas and Chaluhas. After that, the kingdom of women, where they feed upon bullocks and heifers. Now about the Himalayas and its hills in the north of India. These are the Krancha and Madhuman Hill, and the Kailasa, Vanusman, and Sumeru peaks, at the foot of which are the people known under many names. Beside these, there were met the warlike tribes of Indra, consisting of the Madra wars, Malavas, and Surasenas, the Rajputs of the race of Arjuna, the Trigartas, and the one-legged people, and the Kudras. There were the Abalas, Pakalas, and Sakas, the Kamadurtas, the Dasandas, and the Gavasandas, and club fighters, the Danadas, and Sarakas, and Batadanas also, with the islanders, and Gandharas, and Avati warriors of Malwa, the warlike Taxilas and Bilavan, Godanas, and the renowned warriors of Pushkar. Then there were the Tikshas and the Kalavatras, and the inhabitants of the cities of Kahala and Surabudi likewise. There were the people of the Ratikadarsha and Antaradarsha also, and the Pingalas and the Panjas, the Yamanas and the Yatudana demons too. There were also races of men known as Himatalas and Osmuks, together with the hilly tribes inhabiting the Himalaya, Vasuman, Karancha, and Kailasa mountains. Hear me now relate to you the peoples that came from the northeast quarter, which extend 180 leagues in circumference. There came also the Kalutas and the Brahmaputras, the Kunitas and the Undinas, with the warlike Malavas, and the champions of the Randra and forest states. Then there were the Kedavas and the Sindhaputras of dwarfish statures, the Sabas, the Kachayas, the Pallavas, and the Kamiras, and the Dharadas. There were also the people of Abhisa, the Jarvakas, the Palolas, and the Kurvis, the Kiratas, and the Yatupatas, together with the poor and rich people of desert lands and tracts of coal. Thus, Leela in one vision saw the homes of the gods, and the forest lands and the earth in all their beauty. She saw all the seats of opulence and the buildings with which they were adorned. She saw the summit of Kailash and the delightful groves at its foot, and the level lands traversed by the aerial cars of Vitadara and other celestial beings. So what is being portrayed here with this seemingly endless list of hills and mountains and people of various characteristics, all lining up for battle, fighting with each other? This is a metaphor for the mountain ranges of karma that we all carry and are challenged with the balancing in this lifetime if we are to achieve Jivan Mukti. So why talk about all this? What good is it to know that we have these huge, vast mountain ranges of karmic traces to deal with in this lifetime if we're to achieve the goal of human existence? It's enough to make you want to give up. We don't try anymore. This is too much. Cannot do it. We're going to find out that's even more as we get into chapter 37, because now the battle commences. the raging conflicts of the karmic traces. And what do we have in our arsenal to defeat all of this? We have the ability to think a thought. Seems almost ridiculous in contrast, doesn't it? So here we are, we have one tiny ability. And when we're talking about thinking a thought, of course, in the Vedic literature, that's Arjuna, isn't it? Arjuna has only one ability. He can shoot an arrow. Actually, he can aim the arrow. He can put it in the bow. And he can draw the string back to his ear. And he can aim at the target. And then he can release the arrow. That's the only thing Arjuna knows how to do. And Krishna is there as his charioteer to tell him this is his duty. This is all he must do. That's the only thing he knows how to do. And he must not be concerned about the mountain ranges before him. Simply shoot the arrows. And Krishna says, if you'll do that, I'll take care of the rest. So now we see where the grace of God comes in. Without the grace of God, Jivan Mukta would not be possible. So, fortunately, we have the grace of God. Fortunately, we have the Acharya Devatas. Acharya Devatas are literally the grace of God, personified, sitting before us as we do our meditation every day, and looking for the opportunities to destroy a mountain range here and a huge rock of karmic traces over there, with the amazing Shaktipat. Shaktipat is, of course, the spiritual energy of the universe. It is the light of the universe that comes into this universe from Param Jyoti. Param Jyoti is the effulgence of Krishna. So we haven't been left alone, thankfully, and we're going to win this one. Let's carry on and see how the battle, the catalog of forces, continues in chapter 37. Vasishtha said, thus the ravaging war was making a rapid end of men, horse, elephants, and all. The brave coming foremost in the combat fell in equal numbers on both sides. These and many others were reduced to dust and ashes. The bravery of the brave served only to send them like poor moths to the fire and flame of destruction. Know now the names of the central districts, not yet mentioned by me. that sent their warriors to the field in favor of the consort prince of Lila. These were the island forces of Sursena, the Gudas, and the Askanga, the Madhyamikas, and they that dwell in the tropics, the Salukas, and the Kodmals, and the Pipalayanas, the Madhavajas, and the Pandyas, the Surivas, and the Gurjars. The Pariyatras, Kurashastras, Yamuna, and Udumbaras, and the Rajwaras, and the Ujjainas, and the Calcuttas, and the Mathura of Mutra. The Panchalas, the northern and southern Dharmashetras, the Kurukshetras, the Panchalakas, and the Saraswatas. The line of war chariots from Avati, being opposed by the arms of the warriors of the Kunta and Panchala districts, fell in fighting by the sides of the hills. Those arrayed in silk clothes, being defeated by the enemy, fell upon the ground and were trodden down by elephants. The brave of Daspura, being hacked in their breasts and shoulders by enemy weapons, were pursued by the Bana Bhuma warriors and driven to a distant pool. The Santikas, being ripped in their bellies, lay dead and motionless in naked field, wrapped in their mangled entrails that were torn and devoured by the voracious Vishakas at night. Veteran and outspoken warriors of Bhadrasiri, well skilled in the battlefield, drove the Amargas into a ditch like tortoises to their pits. The Hyhalyas were driving the Dandakas, who fled like fleet stags, flying with the swiftness of winds, gushing blood drawn by pointed, piercing enemy arrows. The Doradas, gored by the tusks of enemy elephants, were carried away like broken tree branches in the floods of their blood. The Chinnas, bodies mangled by darts and arrows, cast themselves in the water, their bodies a burden they could no longer bear. The demons, pierced in their necks by Carnatic lancers, fled in all directions like faggots of fire, or like the flying meteors of heaven. The Sakas and the Dasakas fought each other by pulling the other's hair, as if whales and elephants were struggling mutually with their respective elements. Fleeing cowards were trapped in snares cast by the Darsarna warriors like dolphins, hiding under reeds, or dragged out by nets on the blood-red shore. The Tonga's swords and pikes destroyed the Gurjara force by the hundreds. Like razors, shaved the heads of Gurjara women. The luster of the warriors' weapons illumined the land like flashes of lightning and clouds of arrows rained like showers in the forest. A flight of the crowbars obscured the sun and frightened the Abhihara warriors with the dread of an eclipse. They were as surprised as if ambushed by a gang of plunderers after their cattle. Handsome gold-collared, tawny-colored Tamara soldiers were dragged by the Garuda warriors as captors snatched their fair captives by the hair. Like cranes by vultures, Tongans were beset by Kanasas with their blazing weapons, destroying elephants and breaking discuses. The rumbling noise raised by Gauda warriors whirling their cudgels frightened the Gandharas so much that they were driven from the field like a herd of beasts, or like the fearful Dravidas. A host of Saka warriors, dressed in black like the mist of night, poured like a blue torrent from the blue sky before their white-robed foes, the Persians. The crowded array of arms lifted in the clear and bright sky appeared like a thick forest under a milk-white ocean of frost that shrouds the mountainous regions of Mandara. From below, the flights of arrows appeared like cloud fragments in the air. And when viewed from above by the celestial, appeared like waves of the sea. The air was a forest, thickly beset by trees of spears and lances, with arrows flying like birds and bees, and innumerable umbrellas, with their gold and silver mountings, appearing as so many moons and stars in the sky. Kekalyas made loud shouts, like the war whoops of drunken soldiers. Kankas covered the field like a flight of cranes, and the sky was filled with the dust over their heads. The Karatha army made a murmuring sound like the effeminate voices of women, causing the lusty Angas to rush upon them with a furious roar. Kasyas, bodies covered with kusha grass, appeared like birds with feathers and raised clouds of dust, flapping their feathered arms.